Un video más, mi gente. Me gustaría saber desde dónde tú pides el tiempo viendo mi video.
Picture this. It's a crisp, cool Friday night. You decided to go out with your boys and have a few drinks. But you may have had one too many. As you waddle your way to your 3-star Uber driver, you're dropped back off to your 2-bedroom apartment that you live in alone and fall into a drunken slumber on your Dorito-dusted couch. At some point, at like 3 a.m., you slightly open your soberless eyes to see your TV is on. You can hardly make out what you're seeing, but as your eyes open a bit more, you're just able to make out some random unnamed chick being violently scalped by a vintage mime. And before you can truly come to terms with what the hell you're seeing, the booze knocks you out once again, and you wake up the next morning hungover beyond comprehension, and you think to yourself, what the fuck was that? Was I dreaming? Was I tweaking? And to you, good sir, I say no. You were not tweaking. What you saw was peak unserious cinema at its finest. What's poppin', boys? It's your boy HoodQuest, and I'm back at it again to talk about another great horror film. But no, seriously, I'm back at it again to talk about what I believe is the most horrible, in a good way, and entertaining clown to ever rub its feces on the horror scene. And that's right, I'm talking about Art the Clown, you know the one. And rather, I'm talking about the poppin' horror series, Terrifier, and of course, Terrifier 2. Alright? But before we jump into the nitty-gritty, I just have a few things I wanted to say first. If you view my community tab, you may have noticed that I alluded to the hint that I was gonna do a review on the Collector and the Collection movies. And I originally was. However, as I rewatched the movies and took notes, I realized there's not a lot I can say about those movies. I'm not saying that I've completely thrown the idea away of reviewing them in the future. I'm just saying that with me being relatively new to the review scene, you know, I just need more time to really gather my thoughts about them. Okay? Good. Now, with that out the way, let's talk about what we're here for. Terrifier. Now, to put it simply, the Terrifier series is about a clown that roams around wreaking havoc. And that's me putting it lightly. Unlike most horror series, especially slashers, Terrifier isn't about the victims, it's about the killer himself, rather. And the killer, Art the Clown, he carries this in every way possible. Much like Jason Voorhees, Michael Myers, and maybe Leatherface, Art the Clown is a sadistic killer who never says a word throughout any of the movies. However, unlike those other mentioned horror icons, we know very little regarding Art. Our first appearance of Art's isn't even from the Terrifier movies. It's Art the Clown's first appearance was from the movie All Hallows Eve. Does anyone remember that? No, I don't think so. It's an anthology horror that kind of followed the same formula of its better half or better movie, Trick or Treat. Just not as good. Yeah, and let me just give a warning. If you've never seen either of the Terrifier movies, just be aware that these movies are fucking visceral. All right, they're fucking visceral. Okay. Terrifier is absolutely vile and gory to every extent, and Terrifier 2 takes it to an 11. Like, the first Terrifier looks like a Gerber commercial compared to Terrifier 2. Hell, maybe even a 12, right? And I'm sure a lot of you have heard the stories when Terrifier 2 hit theaters. There were stories of people fainting in the theater and whatnot, and that's where I'm kind of mixed on Terrifier because Terrifier has a simple story that's extremely easy to follow, which is really good for new fans who are trying to get into horror. However, I wouldn't recommend starting with Terrifier if you're new to horror in general or slashers in a sense, especially if you're squeamish. You know, I would advise being very cautious if Terrifier is where you want to start. But as I was saying, Terrifier it has a very easy formula. It knows exactly what it is, what it wants to be, and it doesn't try to be anything more than that. And that's what makes it better, in my opinion. You know, watching these films, it really gives the aesthetic of like 80s drive-in slashers. However, it kind of subverts that expectation by being over-the-top visceral. You could almost argue that Terrifier is meant to be a bloody love letter to the horror scene of the 80s, but that could just be me overthinking it. But from its gritty camera work to its cardboard cutout characters, its cheesiness outside of the murdering is almost comical in a sense. And these movies do have comedy. Actually, some pretty decent comedy here and there. A lot of slapstick on the kills sometimes too. Granted, Terrifier 2, it's a dramatic improvement from the first one. As Terrifier 2 does take time to world build, develop characters, and kind of give us some insight on art. Granted, I don't know what the fuck the insight is. I think there's supposed to be some debate on whether art is a supernatural force or not, though that quickly gets debunked at the end of the first one. Hell, you could probably say that got debunked in All Hallows Eve, if you've seen that. And by the way, you don't really need to watch All Hallows Eve to get more insight on art, because much like the actual movies that star him, it hardly explains shit about what he is. But I'm almost 100% certain art is a supernatural force, maybe even a straight up demon. Probably most definitely a straight up demon. Now let's talk about the kills. Right? Terrifier is an absolute madhouse when it comes to its kills. And if you've seen these movies, you know I'm probably putting that lightly. They're vile, they're visceral, and sometimes they go for too long. And I love it. Art does not hold back on absolutely mutilating his victims. Like, both movies have particular scenes where the violence enters an all-time high. And if you've seen both movies, you know the scenes. The scene in the first one is crazy, and the scene in the second one is completely wild. It goes on for so long, and it really just shows how unforgivably sick art is. I mean, damn it, I'll say it. Art may very well be the best clown in horror. Like, as weird as like Pennywise. Fuck Pennywise. Yeah, I'll say it. Fuck Pennywise. You know, Pennywise's weakness is he's getting his feelings hurt because of third graders calling him pussy. Like Art be pulling Glocks. He's him. Yeah, like art is like that. All right. And I think that's the part I love most about Art. It's just how much he doesn't give a fuck. You can't reason with him. You can't make him feel empathy, and if Art wants you dead, then my god, you're dead. Alright, and my thoughts on each movie are pretty simple. Like, the first one is fun, the second one is funner. Alright, both movies have something that makes them great, and that's Art himself. Like, while the first movie is only carried by Art, the second one actually has decent characters besides Art. I also just like the aesthetic of 2 a lot more than 1. You know, I'm not ashamed to admit that I go back and watch the Terrifier movies pretty regularly, just because I find them very fun and entertaining. I may need to be locked in an asylum. I've always preached that even though I do love movies with story, characters, and overall plot, it's also fun to just enjoy a movie for what it is. And Terrifier is just that. It's not meant to be deep and intuitive. It's just mindless violence for the sake of entertainment. And while that definitely isn't everyone's cup of tea, it can trigger a good dopamine for those that it is for. And as far as being the best clown in horror, I think Art definitely holds that title for his horrific nature and overall personality. Like, Art is a great character. He's fun in a very sadistic sort of way. Now, watching Terrifier 2 for the first time can be a bit confusing. As far as the story goes, with our main protagonist and Art, there's definitely some sort of narrative that they're trying to tell regarding some sort of history between the main character's father and Art, though it's not exactly explained. The second movie is the better of the two, but I do recommend both films, especially if you like violence. My overall thoughts of the Terrifier movies are that they're grotesquely violent films that, for the most part, are needlessly violent, and I love them. Art the Clown, he truly carries these films in a special way, and every time he's on screen, you know some shit's about to go down. Before he's killing, he's an oddly ominous bundle of laughs and giggles, to the audience at least, and when he's killing, He makes sure that each kill is vile, overdone, and simply over the top. It's a lot like Super Jail. If you've never seen Super Jail, it was an old show on Adult Swim back in the day. It was basically the show's claim to fame was its extreme adult humor and even more extreme violence. And Terrifier has the exact same charm. Terrifier is the Super Jail of horror movies, and I like Super Jail. Would I recommend the Terrifier movies? Yes, to your own discretion. These movies, again, are not for the easily disturbed, because, as I warned, these movies do not hold back on the gore. They do not. And they show you everything in all its horrific glory. The first movie has no real plot or reason, and it's pretty much a B-rated slot film you'd find in a bargain bin, but it's fun at the same time. Terrifier 2, in my opinion, is a huge improvement from the first film. It actually has somewhat of a plot, while also having some fairly likable characters with personality and motivations. And even still, it remembers the real star of the show, who the real star of the show is, and puts art in the front and center of the spotlight. It has small pieces of many things I like, good characters, a not overly complicated plot, more or less, and most importantly, a killer who really just steals the show. Art has definitely built a niche fan base for himself, probably not as niche anymore, but primarily those who really enjoy the gross and grungy. And now, for the final question. Do I think Art is the best clown in horror? Well, think of it like this. Which would you rather have happen to you? Be eaten by a sewer clown, or be scalped, salted, bleached, and chopped into damn near subatomic particles over your former self? Yeah, if I had to choose to encounter Pennywise or Art, I'd take being eaten over whatever Art would do to me any day. And that's why I think he is, at the very least, one of the greatest horror clowns in cinema ever. And he's definitely a rising star in the slasher scene. Don't sleep on Art. Don't sleep on Terrifier. And what more can I say? The movies they're basic, they're simple, they're easy to follow, but at the same time, they're a bloody good time in every aspect of the word. Very bloody. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, like it. If you want to see more reviews coming to this channel soon, why not hit that subscribe button? I've also done reviews on both the Saw series and the Final Destination series, and you can check those out here. Have a movie or show or a game you want to hear my thoughts on? You can tell me about it in the comments. And who knows, maybe I'll do a video on it on this channel. Thanks again. Take care of yourself, and I'll be seeing you again real soon in the next one.